Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Midstream Manna. We are here and we are connecting to the digital space here as a community in the middle of the week, at the mid-hour of the day, that we might fellowship together and carve out this time so that we can flow with God. Midstream Manna is one of the many ways that Eden Theological Seminary lives out its call, which is to strengthen the life of the church, to enliven critical reflection on faith, and to support bold Christian discipleship. And so we want you to know that if you are interested in pursuing a theological education, whether it's one that culminates in a degree, or if you're looking for continuing education opportunities, or if you just want to deepen your biblical and theological understanding, then know that Eden has something for you. And so I'm encouraging you to check us out at www.eden.edu and tell them that Dr. Lettsome sent you. So this week's manna comes from the book of Exodus, chapter 14, verses 10 through 15, where these words are found. As Pharaoh drew near, the Israelites looked back, and there were Egyptians advancing on them. In great fear, the Israelites cried out to the Lord, and they said to Moses, "Was it because there were no graves in Egypt that you have taken us away to die in the wilderness? What have you done to us, bringing us out of Egypt? Is this not the very thing we told you in Egypt? Just let us alone and let us serve the Egyptians? For it would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the wilderness." But Moses said to the people, "Do not be afraid. Stand firm and see the deliverance that the Lord will accomplish for you today. For the Egyptians who you see today, you shall never see again. The Lord will fight for you, and you have only to keep still." Then the Lord said to Moses, "Why do you cry out to me? Tell the Israelites to go forward." For the next few moments, I want to talk to you from the subject, nowhere to go but forward. Won't you pray with me? Here we are, God, one more time, seeking your face, desiring to hear a word from you. And we ask simply that you would speak, Lord. Let the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, my strength and my Redeemer. Amen. They are in an in-between place, not where they were, but not yet arrived at where they are going. They are in between, and in between can be scary. The familiarity of the past is behind, and the security of what is ahead has not yet been realized. But there is no need to panic because there's nothing really confronting them except their uncertainty. For now, they're safe. They are now camped in front of the Red Sea, and that's enough. The Red Sea is in front of them, but even that is not an immediate problem. They have time to figure out. They have time to go around it or find a better place to cross it, maybe build some boats and float over it, or just stay camped by it. This obstacle in front of them, the Red Sea, that's not really the problem. The problem is the past coming behind them. Strange when you think about it. No one panics until the past comes up. The Red Sea caused no concern until the Egyptians come wanting to take them back. And now, like a moth to a flame, the Israelites want to go back to where they have just come from. And the thing is, it's not just them. Some of us are in the same position. Here we are, camped at our own Red Sea, already come a long way, but not quite there yet, and the past is coming for us. Past paradigms and habits, past systems and ways of thinking, past attitudes and modes of action, past successes and joys and achievements. They are all coming for us, inviting us and compelling us and chasing after us to go back. And now we too have to decide if we will settle for the past or go forward. Decide. Because a good past will tempt us to settle out of loyalty. We don't want our moving forward to reflect poorly on what happened, what was given, or what was accomplished before. We are better than what we used to be, perhaps gone farther than we imagined, done more than we ever thought we could. And so now we feel like moving even further, growing even more would seem a bit ungrateful or unappreciative or even uppity. And so we decide to quit while we're ahead. I mean, really. Why keep going when right here is pretty good? How dare we want more or do more or desire more after all we've already been given or everything we've already achieved? And so we are tempted to settle, becoming living monuments to the past when the whole purpose of our learning and growing and doing and being and becoming was to prepare us to go forward. And whereas a good past can hold us with loyalty, an okay past will tempt us to settle out of laziness. Because we just don't feel like going forward or figuring out how to go forward or ramping up to go forward. I mean, the only reason some of us have gotten this far is because people dragged us out of Egypt with them. Yeah, if the truth were told, some of us would have stayed in Goshen. We would have stayed in bondage, except that the people who put up with us were ready to go themselves, and so we had to go with them or be left behind. But when this is the case, we probably have been doing the bare minimum ever since. If there's a shortcut, we can find it, a loophole, we'll jump through it, a way out, we will take it, a chance to get over, we will go for it. Some of us have become part of the one less crowd. We always do one less than expected. Always a step behind. If we show up, we don't stand. If we stand, we don't sing. If we sing, we don't stand. If we pray, we won't fast. If we fast, we won't give. If we give, we won't serve. If we serve, we won't pray. We actually want to go back to less or to little or to leftovers because forward requires work. And so all we need is an excuse or a reason or just an obstacle to try to convince ourselves or others that we cannot, when the truth is we will not go forward. We can see the past creeping up on us, and we're glad to surrender to what was rather than fight for what will be. Yeah, a good past can hold us with loyalty. An okay past will tempt us to settle out of laziness, and a bad past will tempt us to settle out of low self-esteem. Like the Israelites, a bad past can beat a slave mentality into us, in which we are not people, just objects for someone else's use. Our worth comes from however we can benefit them. Our sense of self comes from what they think about us. Our esteem is based on whether or not they want or like us. Because as slaves, we have no real independent or intrinsic value. It's always connected to them, what they say or think, what they want us to do. A slave mentality will make us think that we don't really deserve anything, can't get anything, can't go anywhere without them. A slave mentality will make us believe that we need the Egyptians because all that we are and all that we have is based on our relationship with them. And even though we don't like them or don't like being mistreated by them or complaining that we don't want to be with them, we still don't know who we are and are downright afraid to be without them. And so this in-between place makes us want to go back to them. That's what I think happens to the Israelites. They look at who they are and conclude that they are slaves. They look at where they are in between the Red Sea in front of them and the Egyptians behind them, and they conclude that they have nowhere to go but backwards. And meanwhile, God looks at who they are, that they are the children of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, that they are heirs to their promises. And God looks at where they are, that they are at the brink of the promised land, that they are closer than they ever imagined, that they're on the verge of being free, that they're about to enter a new season with the Red Sea in front of them and the Egyptians behind them. And in effect, the Lord tells them, you have nowhere to go but forward. Yes, go forward, because they and you and me, we are not here to be defeated or drowned. If the truth were told, we'd have to acknowledge that there were enough enemies, enough bondage, enough bad choices, enough blatant sin in the past to have taken us all out by now. That if the past is all God has for us, if the past is the best God has to offer, then God could have left us in Egypt to our own devices with those same people doing that same stuff. That if death and destruction and defeat was to be our lot, God could have done it quicker, easier, and with our own help back in Egypt. So if the Red Sea is in front of us, and we have no idea about how to make it through, if what's ahead even looks impossible to get through, if we're afraid of the new place or the new thing God has for us, then my task is simple. I've just come this afternoon to remind us that it's time to quit looking backward and know that even when we cannot figure out how to go forward, we still need to face forward. And somebody listening may also need to know that before some stuff gets turned around, you have to turn around first. I mean, so often we are wondering, where is God? When will God show up? Without realizing that we are running the risk of missing God because we are looking in the wrong direction. Understand that God is done working behind us because that's in the past. God is working right in the midst of us, in front of us, in the present, preparing us for the future. So make sure you turn around. Turn around because we already know who God was and what God did. Now it's time to see again who God is. Have you ever noticed that that's what the Bible most often tells us about God? The Bible tells us who God is, not who God was. God is a refuge and a fortress, a very present help in the time of trouble. And from everlasting to everlasting, God is God. The Lord is my shepherd, and I shall not want. The Lord is a keeper. The Lord is the shade at my right hand. The Lord is king and strength. The Lord is strong tower. The Lord is light and my salvation. The Lord is the stronghold of my life. The Lord is merciful and gracious. The Lord is slow to anger and abounding in steadfast love. The Lord is high above the nations and exalted. The Lord is good and greatly to be praised. Y'all, God was a burden bearer in Egypt. Now turn around and see God be a way maker at the Red Sea. God was a protector in the past. Turn around and see God provide in the present. God opened doors in the past. Turn around and see God open the windows of heaven in the present. God gave a breakthrough in the past. Now turn around and see God give a blessing in the present. God answered a prayer in the past. Now turn around and see God anoint in the present. God did it in the past. Now turn around and see what God will do in the present. For God can do greater than we think, ask, or imagine. God can do what is impossible to mortals. God does all things well. You know the end of the story. The Red Sea didn't have the final say. Instead, God blew back its wet walls and they walked across on dry land. The Egyptians tried to follow, but Pharaoh's army got drowned in the Red Sea. And you know the end of another story. That old rugged cross didn't have the final say. They hung him high and stretched him wide because some religious and political rulers wanted to take the people back to BC and not cross over to AD, but early Sunday morning. So if you found yourself in transition, located between here and there, now and not yet, if you find yourself in a place that is similar to this First Testament situation, with the past coming behind you and the future seemingly blocked in front of you, then ask yourself a Second Testament question. If God be for us, then who can be against us? And look forward, because you have nowhere to go but forward.
Do my